So some of these couples, they're fighting. This is part of their marital journeys.
It is.
Right?
It's the fight for the promise, right? God's given them a promise, and so they are in the depths of it and trying to work towards it. So I really help them through the marriage, keeping the marriage strong. I mean, even without infertility, a 50% divorce rate. So helping the marriage stay strong, helping them to make the best decisions for their family, helping them build a support system, not feel alone. A lot of these families have anonymous Instagram accounts because they don't really share with people in their everyday life what they're going through, because there's a lot of shame involved, a lot of secrecy. Yeah. So helping them build a support system in their everyday life, and then also how to deal with the triggers and the loss. So strategies for life satisfaction while you're in the fight, for dealing with pregnancy announcements. Can you imagine trying to have a baby, every month getting a negative pregnancy test, and then hearing your best friend gets pregnant, or your sister-in-law? So how do you navigate those kid-centered holidays and the pregnancy announcements and those things that can trigger emotions?
Right. And I remember a conversation we had about you saying that you saw somebody that was happy for you.
Yeah.
But then, and people, I'm assuming, they want to be happy for you.
They do.
Genuinely happy. But at the same time, it strikes a nerve, or it strikes an area of their life of pain. And I believe that you had that experience as well.
I did. When God first put it on my heart to be a surrogate, it was because a friend of mine, I went and shared that we were pregnant with our second, and the look of joy and pain flashed across her face simultaneously at the same time. And that's when I knew God gave me a gift to use to help people, and that she was dealing with infertility. Wow. So it's deep. It's like, how do you deal with being in the valley when other people are on the mountain? Right. And that's your promise. That mountain is your promise. So how do you keep going in faith?
That has really touched me about what you're doing is that being a single mom, as it is to raise our children, the struggles that we go through and the journey of itself, for you to make that, it has really touched my heart. So I just wanted you to speak a little bit about how God has stepped in, how He's strengthened you through that.
The main thing for me when I delivered my surrogate baby is that God gave me a renewed appreciation for my own children, because being a single parent, you can get frustrated. Being a parent in general, you get frustrated easily. The children start arguing, they leave Legos over the floor, you step on them, and I used to get so frustrated over the little things, and now I realize that, regardless of my circumstances, that even in my frustration, that there's someone longing for that. There's someone out there who wouldn't mind stepping on Legos because they've so prayed for a child and so prayed for a family that, that's my frustration would be a blessing for them. So I learned to view my frustrations as blessings, and I gained a greater appreciation for my own children. Not that I didn't already appreciate them, not that I didn't already love them, but it intensified because I realized the magnitude of delivering a child and being the vessel for this child, for another family, and the joy that they experience, and their baby shower, and even up in his room they have the scripture for this child. I have prayed, and I even, without knowing that this was what they were meditating on, I had bought them a onesie that had that scripture on it, and knowing that this is the child that they had prayed for, and God had heard and answered this prayer, and it just totally changed my perspective on being a mother, and the appreciation for my children, and learning that my struggles, or what I perceive as a struggle or perceive as a difficulty, is something that someone else may be longing and praying for. and to view that with gratitude and to view it, you know, from a different perspective.
Surrogacy, and I believe it's a very unique topic, one that I haven't navigated much in, but I've been in admiration from a distance. So without further ado, I would love to introduce my guest. And we have with us this morning Tiffany Baker. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. And we have Stephanie Dunbar as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them so that you know who they are, what they're doing, and then we're going to dive right in to ask some very, very important questions. And so with Tiffany, I met her at our church and had the opportunity to see her from far away. We've exchanged conversations a few times, but Tiffany is a mom who's birthed 7 children, but only 2 of them are her own. She's a 3-time surrogate, speaker, and writer, and a couples life and fertility support coach. Wow.
That's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful. I don't think I can read all of that in one breath. And I don't think I have enough room in my house for all the hats that you wear. But that's what's exciting, and I love that because, you know, we're so multidimensional. I believe that, especially as women. Just even being a mom, it's so multidimensional. And so we have Stephanie. So some of you may know this. So Stephanie and I, we did some runs together. We were training together, but she's like outrun me. She's doing triathlons and she's doing all kinds of stuff. But Stephanie, she's a mom of 11-year-old Jacob and 8-year-old Giles. She works as a litigation specialist in the mortgage industry.
Yes.
That is awesome. While pursuing her passion for interior design. She's an entrepreneur, a triathlon, and now she's leading a group called Runlifebydesign. Wow, welcome to our program, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being my friend. I feel like so proud. These are my friends, everyone. They're amazing. They do good stuff. So the reason why I asked you ladies to join, you know, the program, and it's because it's something that, you know, I don't feel like most women, we don't wake up one morning and say, hey, I want to do this. And so we're going to start off with Tiffany, because I know we had an extensive conversation about what is surrogacy and you know, what the impact it makes on people's lives, and as far as being kingdom-minded. Wow, you know, when we think about kingdom-minded, we always have maybe a little box, right? Well, how can I serve within this box? And so surrogacy is a way of impacting the kingdom of God totally outside this box. So Tiffany, with that in mind, you know, what led you to make this decision?
Wow. Well, I think a lot of things led me to this decision. Really, it started back when my husband and I had our first baby. She was turning 1, and we quickly got pregnant with our second. And I was a youth pastor at the time, went into our church, told the associate pastors that we were pregnant, and the look on her face, all at the same time, was like joy and pain. When I was sharing this news with her, and right then I realized 2 things. One was that God gave me a gift, and 2, she must be dealing with infertility. And so that joy and pain she was experiencing was the joy of, yay for you,
oh my
but
God,
oh for me.
It wouldn't have crossed my mind.
And it, just in that moment, that flash, that's really where it started. And in my heart, I just thought, I would do that. I would carry someone's child.
Wow.
And that's kind of how the thought started, and the process just went from there.
Wow, that is amazing. And so what about you, Stephanie? How did you come to that conclusion?
My journey actually extended over a few years. When I was in college, I was reading our school newspaper, and there was an ad for egg donors. And at the time, I was young. I only wanted to design and travel the world. And I never thought, I would have children. So I said, wow, if I don't want to have my own children, what better way to help someone who's struggling? So I went through the process and I became an egg donor. And the morning that I went in for my retrieval, there was another lady sitting in the waiting room, and she was there to go through her retrieval as well, but not as a donor, to go through the IVF process. And she shared her journey with me, and she was explaining that if it didn't work this time, that she would possibly have to get a surrogate. And I thought, wow, I would do that for someone, but I knew that you had to have children. So fast forward, I had my first child, I had my second child, and then the thought came back around and said, I thought after I had my daughter, I'm done having children, but if I could help someone who's struggling and be a blessing, be a vessel for that person, it's something that I'd be more than happy and willing to do.
Wow. And so for me, when I hear that, right, there's so many of us that I would say, hey, I want to serve the kingdom of God, and I'll go and give, even with missionary trips, I admire that a lot, because I've done some missions, but I know I'm not called to the missionary field. Like, I know this. And so for you to be so selfless, because you're putting your body through a lot, right? And so for me, it's the love that goes behind it and everything. It just speaks about how God hears someone's prayer. Because I strongly believe it entered the heart and mind of God before it entered the heart and mind of the person who makes that decision, which would be in your case, which I find, if we put it in the perspective, not only female entrepreneurship, but also put it in the mindset of being a vessel. Yes. It isn't something that everyone just wakes up and decides to do, And so how God hears the cry of this woman that showed her pain. She didn't even ask for it. That is so amazing. So now, what about when you talk to your husband? That's an interesting question right there.
Yeah, it is. I kind of just threw it out there. My husband, I'm like an idea person, so he's kind of used to me coming like, I have an idea, and I think he kind of just like braces himself.
Does he take any position whatsoever? Like, let me sit down before you give me your idea.
Yeah, exactly. So I've learned over the years, on how to present my ideas so that they can be received. But I was pleasantly surprised. I just said, what do you think about me being a surrogate? He's like, well, what does that entail?
Yes.
And so we kind of went through the fact-finding, the research, and together I would research and just share with him, and he was all on board. He's always on board with my ideas. He has a different spin on them, right? Because he's different, so he thinks a little bit different. What matters to him is a little bit different than me. But together as a family, we even talked about it. Our girls were young when I first became a surrogate. But even just drawing the family in and just saying, Mommy and Daddy, we're so blessed. This is what we said to our kids. We're so blessed to have you. You're the greatest joy and gift that we want to help another family be blessed just like we are.
Wow.
And so it's been almost normal for them since they were 4 and 6. I've been a surrogate and gone through the process.
Right. So now if someone is listening and say, okay, where's just the starting point? Because I know there's a lot of details involved, but let's just say what would be the starting point to look into that? Where would they start?
To be a surrogate
Yes.
or to have a surrogate?
To be a surrogate or to have a surrogate.
Well, I guess either way, there's so much now online, but a good surrogacy agency, and there's a great one, and Stephanie and I actually are part of the same one.
Wow.
And so which is fun, and it's called Shared Conceptions, but it's a wonderful agency. But they'll kind of have an FAQ on there and just kind of take you through the process. Some people choose to go through the agency route to find a surrogate, and some people will use somebody that they know and do it one-on-one.
Right.
So there's an independent route and there's an agency route, but there's so much, there's the law involved, there's insurance involved, there's so much involved. I highly recommend an agency.
Yeah, I'm sure that there were. So, Stephanie, what would you say is the most difficult part of making that decision, the hardest part? Because, again, I'm coming from a place of this is something that is like beyond my mind. Yeah. I have two daughters, I have 2 children, and it took me a lot of prayer to to decide to have children and go through that. But I've had 2 difficult pregnancies. And this is why it touched me, because it takes me, oh my God, it brings me tears. So both pregnancies were very difficult. And so, and I wanted children. And so my first daughter, I almost, lost her, and God intervened, and that went quickly. Thankfully, we made it on time. And so it wasn't something that, it was a hard pregnancy. But then I wanted a second child. And so I can imagine a woman desiring and then not being able to have a child. And so I had my second pregnancy, and I had a difficult pregnancy. And then with Raquel, who's my youngest, literally, God did a miracle, because she only had less than an hour to live, and no one knew. And God I went from here to there, like that. And when she was delivered, everyone in the room said she was a miracle. And that's why I'm in tears, because I know how difficult that is. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about those difficulties, right? What makes it harder to make those decisions. And
yeah, well, for me, being a single parent, I wanted to make sure that I had the support system,
right,
and that my children were on board. And my children, we do everything together. I involve them in a lot of decisions, and I knew that this was something that if they were not on board, I could not go forward with it. So
right.
I did a little bit of research. I purchased this book called The Kangaroo Pouch. And it's about a mommy kangaroo who meets another kangaroo family who needs, someone to carry their baby kangaroo. So she carries the baby kangaroo in her pouch. And then when the baby kangaroo's ready, she hands the baby kangaroo back over. So I read this book to my children, and then I asked them, I said, well, what do you think about mommy, being the kangaroo in this instance? And it's so funny, one of them said, so the baby doesn't come home with us, right? I was like, that's correct. The baby does not come
You got this, all right.
And they're, go for it, it's great. And once they were on board, that was great. But then also too, really just being prayerful and mindful that I had the support system. And that was the other thing, that the agency ensures, is that, if you're a single parent, that you have a support system, that if you have to go to the hospital in the middle of the night, who's going to watch your children?
Right. Oh my gosh,
who's
yes.
going, are you going, do you have this, way to get there? And not just that, even, you go through fertility treatments. You have to give yourself shots, if you're by yourself.
Right.
So, and it's funny, I even reached out to Tiffany, for suggestions on how to, do so. But it's a lot to consider, when you don't have the in-home support of
right.
another adult. So that was the most challenging thing for me, is just making sure I had a great support system in place, and
right.
making sure that my children were on board and totally okay and involved in the process. And if any of those things fell out of line, I knew that it was something that I wouldn't be able to move forward with. But when I say God so divinely aligned everything, even from the moment that I reached out to the agency, to connecting with Tiffany and finding out she was with the same agency and we were at the same church home, it was just totally, I believe and I know that his hand was in and throughout each step of the process.